I'm Glenn Miley, and this is When Society Fails. In this episode, we're going to talk about a place you can go that's safe for you and your family. I'm pretty passionate about this subject. This is where my entire plan comes into place, is the place you go. You need to have a place set up and set aside to where you plan on going to have your long-term sustainability. The place I have, it has many natural resources. There is a river within a half-mile through a wooded area. There is a large lake close by that has an abundant fish population. It is well stocked with large bass and large catfish. There's also a wooded area. The entire compound, if you want to call it that, or village that I have picked out, my safe place, my base camp, is surrounded by forestry. This forestry has an abundant wildlife population of deer, hogs, rabbits, birds, all kinds of food resources. Also, we have it at the facility. It has nice, dark, fertile ground to be growing a farm in. I picked this place because of my ability to interact with it to help plan for the day if we have a society collapse. Now, you need to pick somewhere that you can go with your family and your group of people to have long-term sustainability. You don't necessarily need to own the land. I'm not telling you that you need to go take over a piece of land, but you don't necessarily need to own the land. When we have a complete society failure, no one owns any land at that point. Every piece of land in this country and in the world is up for grabs. And when there's a farm or a wooded area or some sort of preserve and it gets abandoned because society has collapsed, that will make a perfect place to set up your village, to set up your base camp. A few things you want to look into when picking a piece of land to have as a base camp, and that is the natural resources surrounding your base camp. But you need to have a natural water supply, a river, a creek, or even a lake. Not a pond, a lake. So you have a good, clean water supply. You still need to boil the water and treat the water, but at least you'll have an abundant water supply. You also need to be considering about what kind of wildlife's in the area. Is there a lake with fish? Is there deer? Is there pigs? Is there rabbits? Maybe you're up in the northern states. Is there larger game? Some places that would work out really well for your base camp is state parks. Now, I know that may sound a little funny. Hey, I can't go take over a state park. Remember, government's gone. Society has collapsed. Nothing belongs to anybody. A state park generally has two items. And almost every state park has two items. A natural water supply and open land with wildlife. The key components that you need for long-term sustainability. You can find a state park that you say, I want to use this state park. Start volunteering there. Get in with the park ranger. See what his thoughts are on this whole prepping in the world thing. He may be into it. He may let you put some cash out there to start preparing for when society fails. If he's not into it, if he doesn't read right, don't even tell him about it. But when society fails and you show up with your group of people, he's going to either have to join you or fight you. And he's not going to fight you. He's not going to leave. He doesn't want to be in the cities either. So he's going to join your little group, which is fine. So you can set up a nice little compound within the park that you can protect. Then you can have scouters going out within the park to get your food and your water. But you don't have to worry about as much crime because state parks, again, are generally out in the non-populated areas of your county or your state. There's a couple places that I found that I would absolutely love to make my base camp, but they're too far away from my home, and I'm not going to risk going there, and I don't have any way of going there now and getting in good with the people that work there. But there's two places that if I lived close by, I wouldn't even tell you about them because they would be my base camp. One is there's a state park up in northern Florida. It used to be a farm, so now it's a historical farm state park. And at this park, there is already a primitive, pre-power, pre-cars, pre-normal life today village set up on this thing. It's got a house, it's already got cattle, it's already got horses, it's already got a a little farm growing. It's got chickens, it's got a pitcher pump, it's got everything you need to live in primitive life, and it's out in the country. It also has all the primitive toolage. It has the grinding wheels that you grind sugar cane with to get the cane syrup. It has the vats to boil off the cane, to boil off the water out of the cane syrup to produce sugar. It has the primitive tools to pull behind horses to plow the land. It has blacksmithing. It has all the primitive tools necessary to live without any modern conveniences. It's the perfect location to set up. You go there, if you lived in the area, you go there, and I think if you live in the area, you know where I'm talking about. You go there, you start volunteering. You get to know the park ranger again, and you get in with them, and you tell them, so look, this is going to be my place. This is where we are coming when society fails. And he will join you, all right? He's not going to fight you. And that place is so perfect. If I lived up in that area, again, that would be my base camp. There's another one, and I'm going to tell you the name of this one. It doesn't really matter. You probably won't be any good if this video gets a lot of views. If it doesn't get a lot of views, then it's still a good place. And that is in the Great Smoky Mountains, Cades Cove in particular. Cades Cove is a historical village. It's got historical buildings. It's got historical tools. It's got all this historical stuff showing you how people lived back in the 1800s, which is what you would need to live after society fails. So it's a perfect place to set up your base camp. And then, of course, the Smoky Mountain Park has all kinds of wildlife that could support your family and your group of people for a very long time. And the grounds outside Cades Cove is big, lush, fertile ground for planting crops. There's already cows and horses. Everything you need for primitive life is already there at Cades Cove. Of course, not everybody lives next to Cades Cove or this state park that up in North Florida. So you're going to need to find a piece of land that you're going to pick. It doesn't have to be a state park. It could be really anything. And if you can't get in there on a normal basis, you could sneak out there. I'm not giving you permission to trespass, but you could sneak out there and hide some caches. A well-hidden cache will never be found by anybody. And then if society fails, you already have some supplies out there. But a few key components besides the resources on the property: you got to make sure there's water, and you got to make sure there's wildlife, and you got to make sure there's some areas that are clear that you can plant crops, because you're going to have long-term sustainability. As I said before, I'm not a prepper per se. Other than what's in my pantry, that's all I have for food. And if society were to fail tomorrow, I have to take what I have on hand, and that's going to get me going for the first 2 months. But by that time, I'm already going to have I'm already going to have supplies coming in from the natural surroundings around me. And people say, "Oh, we're going to stockpile this medication or this or that." At some point, it's going to run out. So you're not going to have that stuff forever. So you can't be dependent on that. So you might as well start right up front with your own self-sustainability. A couple things about your place you want to pick. Like I said, you want it to have a water resource, you want it to have a wildlife resource, and you want it to have some flat ground for growing. You want it to have some flat ground for growing crops. A couple other things you want to think about when picking your piece of land is you don't want it to be close to a major city or even a medium-sized city, because eventually them crime waves will come out to you. I mean, you're going to have crime at your compound. There's no doubt about it. You're going to have crime, but you want to have the least amount of crime as possible. If you're out in the country, very small few crime waves are going to go out there. The people in the cities that are killing and stealing, they're killing and stealing because they're not willing to work for food. Okay, they're not willing to go out and actually do something productive, and they're not willing to travel 20 miles out into the country to your village, to your base camp, to rob you. Now, you will get people rolling through that are going to attempt to rob you, but that's why you have a perimeter set up, and that's why you have a group of people, which we're going to get into the group of people in the next episode. A couple other things you don't want to have around you. You don't want to be close to a nuclear power plant. You got to really think about that. If society fails and power's off and everything's down, there's nobody doing anything, nobody's doing any of their old jobs, who's going to monitor the power plants? Who's going to monitor the nuclear power plants? I don't know a lot about nuclear power plants, but I would think if no one's there monitoring it, eventually it's going to fail, and eventually there's going to be a meltdown. So you don't want to be near a power plant. You need to know, or a nuclear power plant, you need to know what's around the area you pick for your safe place. Now, it can be 100 miles away. You just got to watch. You got to watch world events and even events in the country. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to wake up in the morning and the world's going to be in total chaos. It's going to come slowly. It's going to take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even a month before society is fully in the collapsing mode. You have to watch the major cities. If you live in New York or Chicago or LA, I don't know what to tell you. But if you live in a smaller city and you're watching the news and then these crime waves start popping up in the major cities, New York, LA, Chicago, and people are killing each other and the cops can't keep up with it and they're sending in martial law and they can't keep up with it, and then it starts spreading to the medium cities, Atlanta, Detroit, and you're like, whoa, it's coming here. I need to get to my safe place. So you grab your group of people and you all meet out there. So it's not going to be in an instant. You can drive 100 miles. As long as you don't have to drive through a major city, you can drive a little ways. But you need to make sure you go before the collapsing of society reaches your rural area. That brings us to the end of this episode. And I hope you found this, again, helpful and made you think about really holding up at your home. It's not going to work. You really need to consider finding a piece of land that you can call your base camp, to where your group of people can go to set up for long-term sustainability. Be sure to comment. I want to hear your thoughts and your opinions. And to continue getting this series, be sure to subscribe. Out.